Fostering connection through vulnerability, the People Pleaser podcast validates struggles, celebrates growth, and inspires positive change. Together, let's embrace authenticity, challenge patterns, and evolve with compassion. Hello, everybody. It's Corie. I am being wildly irresponsible, and this episode comes out tomorrow, and I'm only recording it now. It's already Monday, and I haven't found my groove. This is a little bit too close for comfort, but it's just been a busy week, and I haven't really been, in a position to sit down and record, and I do have the time now. And what I did was I did a little bit of preparation for the episode throughout the week, just kind of jotting notes down and wrapping my head around the topic. And so ultimately, most of the work is done, but this feels a little crazy. I'm really wilding out over here. But life has felt busy. It's not interesting to talk about how busy you are. Like, we're all busy. Nobody cares. But it's been a good busy because I am, if you follow me on Instagram, really been trying to incorporate going to the gym more. So my mornings feel a little bit more structured, which is actually a good thing. I was really fearful of that. I had always saved my mornings to be like really slow, really calm. I just wanted to give myself as much time as possible to just like ease into the day. And I realized like that kind of became a thing, like where I then was afraid to do more or like afraid of burnout. And I was almost like anticipating burnout. Like I didn't really trust that I could take on anymore. And that I needed to give myself like so many hours to just read and drink coffee. And I think that's lovely, but it's also been a really interesting experience to see that, oh no, I can go to the gym. I can get up early. I can go to the gym. I can come home. I can shower. I can have my coffee and still feel like I'm taking care of myself. Like taking care of myself doesn't have to just be in this like very protected cocoon. Taking care of myself can actually also incorporate like leaving the house, working out. That has structured my mornings in a way that is an adjustment. It feels good, but it's something that I'm getting used to and has definitely impeded on my scrolling time. So I've also noticed that I'm just not as present on Instagram and not as engaged. And sometimes that's actually a good thing. But I did wake up today feeling like, I kind of miss you all on there. And so still figuring out that balance. And this weekend was Father's Day, and my dad died in December of last year. So this was my first Father's Day without my dad, and I'd actually really anticipated my grief, and I anticipated that day, like Father's Day, feeling really overwhelming, and I didn't really know what my capacity would be, and I worried that the grief would kind of take over, which would have been fine. Like I would have rolled with those punches. But my girlfriend and I actually spent the day at my dad's house, taking care of the property, doing some work in the yard. And it felt so good. Like it felt so healing and safe and positive and comfortable. So that was actually another example of like pushing myself a little bit beyond what my initial instinct is or my initial thoughts on something is to see that I do have a bit more capacity than I'm giving myself credit for. So that's kind of where my thinking has been at, where my head has been at, is just like, what is possible in this life? And oftentimes I think we are better equipped than we give ourselves credit for. And I've been operating from a very burnt out state for a really long time. And these are giving me opportunities to see that I have actually been taking really good care of myself and that I am ready to add some things in that I've, I guess, taken out. In terms of people pleasing this week, there's nothing overtly people pleasy that's coming to mind. However, I did have a scenario where I felt like I was being questioned and challenged in a way that didn't actually feel good. It felt a little bit unfair, and it felt a little bit of an exaggerated response, like something that could have been handled a little bit differently. And I very quickly fell into this like sheepish type of way. Like I caught myself kind of over explaining myself and felt like I was in trouble. I felt like I had done something wrong. And it took me a few days to like really realize like, no, Corie, you did not do anything wrong. And this was in fact a scenario that could have been handled way differently on the other person's part. And so, yeah, it was an opportunity to really get clear on like what is mine and what is theirs, and not taking that all on, like not feeling guilty, not feeling like I need to now apologize or overcompensate in some kind of way. So yeah, that I think does really rub up against my people pleasing, like always wanting to smooth things over, or wanting to like hating when people are mad at me, or hating confrontation or conflict, and just really kind of appeasing to some of those behaviors. So I mean, in the moment, I didn't do the best job of sticking up for myself, but in my reflections and kind of where I'm like filing that one away, I'm like, yeah, that's not mine. I don't need to carry that one with me. So today's topic, I'm kind of going down a path that I didn't expect to go down when I initially thought of this topic. And the topic is big life decisions and how we can be informed by social pressure, social expectations, social norms, our parents' expectations, our friends and what they're doing, and how these outer influences can really affect our trajectory, whether that's through school, through marriage, through jobs, through deciding whether or not you want to have kids, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These big life decisions that should ultimately just be up to you and possibly your partner. Often we do things for other people that like should have no real say in the matter. Yeah, I'm just going to get right into it because I kind of want to take you down my path that I guess I expected my life, and you've probably all seen that diagram, like what we think life looks like, and it's like a straight line, and then it's like, but what life actually looks like, and it's just this big scribble. My life has been a big scribble. As we grow up, it seems that we track and monitor our growth and our advancement by these pivotal moments, these coming of age checkpoints, and I think it starts with school, and then graduation, moving on to college or university, marriage, kids, owning a home. The list can go on and on. And I'm sure I'm not alone when I talk about the experiences of feeling pressure to move about in this linear way that is often dictated by these external expectations that honestly are just embedded in how we are socialized. I grew up in a home where it was essentially an unspoken expectation that I would graduate high school, attend post-secondary, and go down a relatively predictable path. And I didn't have any problems with this. I actually leaned into it. And I'm now realizing that I do crave structure and I like knowing what's on the horizon. So this did actually work for me. But when I strayed from this path, and I have since strayed repeatedly, I experienced the feelings that I had become an exception to the rules, and I began worrying about outward perception and how I might find my way back on track. Like it was always about getting back on the linear, back on track. And this sort of deviation from the path started when I decided to take a gap year after high school, after graduation. And this was a relatively common experience amongst my friend group, and my parents were supportive of it. But it did kind of feel as though like 1 year was acceptable, but anything more than that could be a slippery slope. Like again, have your little moment, but get back on track. I spent my year after high school traveling and working in customer service jobs. And when the following September, so like a year later came around, I was actually ready and excited to go to college. And one of my best friends was actually enrolling at the same college at the same time. And we like selected our classes together, and it felt like, okay, yeah, let's do this. This is exciting. And I really did like the college experience. But the honest truth is that I had no idea what I was doing. I was just going to college. Like that's kind of where it started and where it ended. I did begin to narrow in on social work as like my career path. And my college offered 2 social work courses. And this was like my first moment of seriously considering a specific profession. Like up until this point, I was like taking all kinds of courses, anthropology, sociology, English, French, just sort of really getting the full college experience and dabbling in areas that were new to me. But social work was an area that when I found it, I was like, oh, this actually really makes sense for kind of just the person I am, the skills I already have, and where I sort of did see myself going. And I remember that for one of my final assignments, there was only these 2 courses. So one of the final assignments for one of the courses was to interview a social worker. And honestly, I don't remember who this man was or how I even found him, but I conducted an interview with him to get a real sense of the profession. And as I was wrapping up my interview, I guess he felt like he had some sense of the kind of person I was. And he told me straight up that I should never become a social worker. Harsh. Because I care too much. So obviously there's a lot to unpack here. This is super problematic. However, the biggest problem of it all is that he was in this position of power, and I trusted his word and his judgment solely based on his position of power. And this comment totally confused me on a very deep level, and it ultimately led me to dropping out of college with nothing to show for it. I didn't finish. I just stopped. I was seriously having like a moral crisis. And at that point, I had invested enough time and enough energy to be like, okay, well, now I'm really lost and it doesn't feel fun anymore. It actually feels stressful and I have a lot of questions. I don't have any regrets with my overall college experience. I did get a lot out of it, but I did feel this like deep sense of shame for leaving, like without any real plan, feeling like I'd flopped, feeling completely directionless. And I ended up taking 3 years off of school. I had no idea what I wanted to do or who I wanted to be. And this really just felt like I'm not ready to go back to school. Like this actually doesn't feel like it's helping. It's not really giving me the answers. It's actually taking what I thought were answers and taking them away from me. And this was an opportunity that I'm grateful for because I was finally being honest with myself. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. So why was I pretending that I did? And this wasn't like stress-free, like leaving college and like starting to work as a server. And, this wasn't stress-free. And I knew that like deep within me, I knew that I would have to eventually go back to school. Like that, it wasn't like I was just going to drop out and not go back. Like there was this now expectation, whether it was my own or still from my parents, like it's all kind of blurry at this point, but it always did feel like I would have to ultimately go back to school. And I think I did want that for myself. But now there was this fear, like, when am I going to go back? And what am I going to do when I go back? And I just didn't want to like replay the tape and be back in the same situation that I was. So it wasn't until like my third year of being out of school that I was accepted into a volunteer program that took me to Brazil for 3 months. And this was a life-changing experience. I got to work with a local volunteer organization in the favelas. So essentially those are like the marginalized communities, deeply impoverished communities in Brazil. And I got to work directly with the community. And the opportunity, this volunteer opportunity, outlined 2 different volunteer roles. One was working with the kids from the favelas, running day programming, kind of like a summer camp. And this was not something that these kids got to experience. So I saw that as like a very rewarding opportunity to be able to like create this programming and offer these experiences to these kids. And this was what I was initially really drawn to because I had experience working with kids at this point, and I'd worked in after school care programs and summer camps. It felt very safe. It felt very familiar. But I was a little hesitant because I'd done it and I was looking for new opportunities, especially after that social worker had like stomped on my dreams. I was second guessing my own way of being and how I showed up in these helping roles. Like he told me I care too much. So yeah, that was kind of, my identity was very confused. The second path, like the second volunteer path, was to work in the favelas in more of a community development role where we would transform these areas within the favela to like community spaces. So we built a playground for the kids and we built a community garden. And ultimately, this is the path I chose because this was a totally new area for me and it really intrigued me. And I'm like, this is a really cool opportunity for me to try something totally different. But what ended up happening is that even though I chose this community development path, there were so many kids who showed up every day who wanted to help and they were curious about what this project was because these were the kids that, like, there were so many kids living in this community. They didn't all get to sign up for this day camp. So inevitably, there was a ton of kids around. And every day I found myself surrounded by kids and I just felt so purposeful in my role of like helping these kids be a part of this project, like getting to know them, like learning about their community through them. It was deeply enriching, powerful, like it warmed my heart. And I was like, okay, well, I can't exactly escape working with kids. Like they found me and I'm good at it. I love it. And yeah, so it was a deeply rewarding experience. And it really did kind of crystallize for me, like that social worker, like, fuck him, pardon my French, but like, I know me better than he knows me. And I get to make these decisions for myself. So when the project was over, I came home from Brazil and I was actually over at a girlfriend's house and I ended up chatting with her mom. And her mom is a clinical counselor. She's worked in the field for a number of years. And she is somebody that I really respect, really look up to. And she introduced me to the idea of the Child and Youth Care undergrad program at the University of Victoria. And honestly, I didn't know anything about it. I honestly thought she was like pitching me like early childhood educator or something like that. And I was a little bit judgy, thinking like, I don't want to go down that path. That's not for me. And I was also like kind of trying to like veer away from what was coming naturally to me. Like I still kind of had that social worker's voice in my head. Like maybe I don't need to pursue this skill set and this professionally. But I still decided to meet up or like have a meeting with one of the advisors for this university program. And as soon as I was in her office and as soon as I learned about like all of the components to this program, it was undeniable that this was literally a program made for me. It took the knowledge I already had and essentially just up-leveled it and gave me more skills, more tools. And because I hadn't finished anything at college, I wasn't even sure if I would like have the prerequisites. And so there was still some fear and still some like residual like, but I dropped out of college and I didn't really like wrap things up with a nice little bow. But it turns out that all I had to do was apply. Like I basically done not only my prerequisites at college, but I'd even done some of the university courses. Like they were university transfer courses. So like it meant I didn't have to redo my English, and like there were certain courses that counted towards university credits. So it actually did me a huge favor, and I can now look back on that college experience and know that it wasn't a waste of time. I didn't know what it was at the time, and now I can be like, no, that's what that was. That was getting you ready to like go full ham into this university undergrad. So university, although a great learning experience, I really knew that I was where I was supposed to be. It was incredibly hard on my mental health. It was at this time that I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. And the system and my own standards and expectations were extremely hard on me. Anything less than an A, or let's be honest, an A+, was not acceptable. And at this point, like I felt like I was behind. I was moving through my degree with these like really high standards, and I was like kind of moving with this like this intensity. It was a real intensity. And this carried into post-grad when I was looking for work. I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be the best at everything I did. I spent a number of years jumping from opportunity to opportunity because I think like in a sense I was trying to get to this like metaphorical top, which, spoiler alert, it doesn't exist. I put a huge amount of pressure on myself to keep finding bigger and better jobs, and outward perception started to feel really important. I've shared this in previous episodes, but my identity became my job, and my job, my identity. I had made it my whole personality and even considered it like my interests. And I felt like I was in this constant state of playing catch up. This ultimately just added to the pressure and anxiety that I started to associate with growth and fulfillment. It was really confusing. At the same time, I was in a relationship that led to my first marriage. My then husband proposed to me. I said yes, and we ended up getting married in 2016. And this is another example of moving through life on a perceived timeline. What we're supposed to do and when we're supposed to do it. We were nearing 30, so it felt like this was the relationship that would lead to marriage. And I kid you not, as soon as we were engaged, the wedding planning just like started. And as soon as we got married, people were asking us literally at our wedding when we were going to start trying to have kids. So soon after our wedding, we started to try to conceive. And honestly, I don't feel connected to this time in my life at all. I truly felt like we were just going through the motions, doing what we thought was the correct path. And after about 6 months of trying, I did get pregnant and unfortunately miscarried. And this was a moment where my life froze, like somebody just hit the pause button. And it felt like I was very slowly coming back to myself. I'd been in a haze of like following these societal norms and expectations, and all of a sudden, nothing mattered. The truth of our miscarriage spoke louder than anything, and it actually put a lot into perspective. Not long after this loss, our marriage started to really destabilize, and we decided to end our marriage by 2018. So we were married for 2 years. Deciding to divorce my ex was another moment of coming back to myself. There's a lot that I'm leaving out, and I do go into it a bit more in my relationships episode, but it was a moment of true awakening when I realized that I was not in the driver's seat of my own life, and I needed to get back to myself. For too long, I'd been doing what I thought I was supposed to do and completely neglected what I wanted and needed to do. The years after my marriage ended were messy, but it was exactly what I needed. I needed to flail around a bit. I needed to regroup. I needed to redefine myself and my needs without any type of justification. I just needed to go through it. The reality that was at play is that there was a fair amount of guilt and shame for going through divorce, having a marriage that ended, having a failed pregnancy. Like, these were very large landmarks, very pivotal moments that I thought that I had, and then I didn't have them. And there wasn't anybody really in my life that I could relate to that I saw also going through a divorce, at the age of 32. Like, so many of my friends were getting married and having kids, and I felt like I kind of hit the reset button. By 2021, I met Brian, my now husband, and this was another huge moment because it was during the pandemic. The borders were closed, and Brian is American, living in the United States, and I'm a Canadian living in Canada. Choosing Brian was not the easy path. Choosing Brian was not the typical path. And for many, choosing Brian was a risky path. But I chose Brian, and I continue to choose Brian. And I want to do an entire episode on our immigration journey, and I will. But essentially, Brian and I decided that we were in this for the long haul. We love each other, and we want to be together, which meant that one of us would ultimately have to move to another country. And this was not an easy decision, and in a lot of ways, it was a scary one, but not actually when it came down to Brian and I. It was it felt scary, but when I'm really honest, it isn't scary. And ultimately, I chose to pursue moving to the United States. We had pros and cons for both directions, and ultimately it came down to me being ready to leave Victoria. And this was another choice that required a lot of explaining, and sometimes it felt like justifying to a lot of my Canadian friends and families. As Canadians, I think there's a lot of fear of the United States, and some warranted, some not. Many people couldn't understand why I would choose to move to the United States and why Brian wouldn't want to move to Canada. And more so, people assumed straight up that Brian was moving to Canada. They didn't even really consider that I might move to the States. This was, however, an experience where Brian and we have felt so grounded that this is our decision and that people are going to have their questions. They're going to have their fears. They'll have their own experiences. And that's likely what they're comparing us to. But at the end of the day, this is mine and Brian's life, and we get to make the rules. So we're still on the immigration journey, and the latest news is that my immigration interview has been booked, and it's scheduled for the middle of July. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be a whole ass chapter of my life. Another big decision that has been at play is whether or not to pursue a master's degree. It's been 10 years since I completed my undergrad, and I was beginning to think that I might not actually go back to school. But not a year has gone by where I haven't considered a master's. And honestly, many of those years, the feelings were that I should do a master's. And I had really tied my worth as a professional to this higher level of education. Each time I went to submit an application, I stopped myself because I felt like I was in the exact same place when I was 18 and applying for college. I was still feeling directionless and just going through the motions, following the shoulds. And so just last month, I decided that I was finally ready to take the plunge. And through therapy, I was able to outline the type of job I want to do, my dream job, and what I needed to do it. And a master's in counseling psychology is going to propel me towards that goal. So with clarity in my decision in this direction, I have just applied for my master's. And it has been such a different experience to be moving towards this goal with a clear state of mind and direction. And I'm fully aware that I'm at the age I am and at the stage of life I am, and it all feels really right. As a people pleaser, it can be incredibly difficult to stand in our own truth and get clear on our own wants and needs. So often we're bending and shrinking to meet the needs of everyone else, telling people what they want to hear, massaging their egos, creating comfort, not rocking the boat. And every time we do this, we move further and further away from our own truth, our own needs, our own wants, our own desires. Sometimes I get embarrassed by how easily influenced I can be. I can quite easily follow the crowd and adapt my behavior and my decisions to be accepted and low maintenance. But I've had some serious ramifications for bending in this way. I've lost touch with my own needs and interests. I've chosen paths that don't suit me or serve me. I've been in relationships for the wrong reasons, which is also very unfair to the other person. I've taken on other people's advice, and it actually hasn't been helpful or healthy. I think it's also worth mentioning that when we feel outward judgment or expectation, it's usually a projection of the standards and expectations that others are putting on themselves. Oftentimes, it's wrapped up in their own fears and anxiety because we are so often comparing ourselves to others to make sense of our own life. In some ways, seeing how others live can give us permission to also live like more freely, more uninhibited. But unfortunately, it's not often as liberating as that. It can often look like fitting into boxes and shrinking ourselves. So, moral of the story is that these influences are out there. They're relatively inevitable. Like, we will face these societal norms and expectations, capitalism, the patriarchy. There's so many systems that we are wrapped up within that influence us without us even realizing we're being influenced. And then we have these moments of being like, wait a minute, who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? And for me, going to therapy and like having different outlets to like really become clear in my own mind of like, cut the shit, pull back the layers, like what would make your heart soar? What is the one thing that you've always wanted to do but like never allowed yourself to do? And I don't think that I would have done anything differently. And I know that's maybe cliche to say, but like I did find my way to myself eventually. And I am now on the path of like, I know I do still maybe lose sight of myself in moments, but they feel smaller and smaller. And my turnaround time to like getting back to myself is like less and less. So I used to make huge decisions based on what I thought was the expectation or whatever. And now maybe I'm just making these small decisions that don't really impact anybody. So the more we can get clear on our wants and our needs, the more fulfilling our life will be. It's really that cliche, y'all. So this was my journey, my path. And as with everything, you will have your own. And this podcast really is aimed to help you not feel so alone and to know that I'm also just flailing about over here trying to get it right. And I always joke that like I do everything the hard way, and that's just true. I've never taken like, as much as that linear path seemed really safe and desirable, I've been a scribble my whole life. And I think the sooner we embrace that scribble, the closer to our truth and our authenticity will be. I would love to hear about your life transitions, your life decisions, the things that help ground you and guide you that feel helpful and nourishing. So as always, my DMs are open. I love connecting with you all. I love just feeling like we're in each other's corners. We got each other's backs. So sending you so much love, and I'll talk to you soon. Once again, this is Corie with the People Pleaser Podcast. Thank you so much for your support. And if you did like what you heard, please consider leaving a 5-star rating and a review on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can find daily content from me on both Instagram and TikTok. Both handles are at peoplepleaser.pod. That's at peoplepleaser, all one word, .pod. Thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you on the next episode.